For the next tutorial, we're going to need to work with some custom brushes. And the easiest way to find custom brushes, you can create your own brushes, but there are sites out there that have a wealth of custom brushes already created for you. You just have to download them and put them in Photoshop. So the first thing you want to do is launch Photoshop. And I'm going to go File and New and open a new document. Size of the document really doesn't matter at this point. I'm going to go ahead and make this 17 inches wide by 11 inches tall. The resolution is fine, and I'm going to click OK. So I have a brand new document here. It's a bright white piece of paper, and I am going to demonstrate how to load a brush, how to find a brush, load a brush, and use a brush, just kind of in its most simple terms. So brushes are located. When I click on the brush, I have all of these preloaded brushes that came with my Photoshop, and I can get brush options by clicking on the little folder next to, and then this thing opens up and I've got all kinds of different things that I can do with it, and we'll get to those in just a little bit, but I'm going to close that for now. If I want to go beyond the brushes that have been provided to me, well, I can go out to a web browser and I can go to a site called brusheezy.com. It's one of a lot of different sites. If you search Photoshop brushes, you'll get all kinds of different hits. And what I want to do at Brusheezy, the first tutorial that I'm going to create for you, we're going to use watercolor brushes. And so if I type in the word watercolor and hit the search, I get all of these different choices. If I click on, I'm going to click on this green one here. It says Watercolor Basics by Germ Shaw. And I click on the download button. If you get a dialog that looks like this, you don't need to join. It's okay, and it'll pop up to this thing, and eventually it'll get to your download icon, and it'll say, what do you want to do? And I'm going to open it with the archive utility and hit OK. And what you'll see is you'll get a little thing up here that tells you how long it's going to take. I've already downloaded it a couple times. You're going to have to wait for this thing to download. You can pause while yours is downloading. I'm going to cancel this though because I already have these downloaded. When it's done downloading, you'll find that by going down on your dock, down at the bottom, next to your H drive, there's a button on your dock that says Downloads. And Downloads, you can open the downloads in the Finder. And we're looking for this file right here. Now, when I double click on that file, nothing will have appeared to have happened, but you'll see it kind of jump just a little bit. So you saw that little icon jump right there. If you didn't see it, go back and look at it again before you double click on yours. Nothing will have appeared to have happened, but in Photoshop, now in my brush palette, where before I had just a few brushes up here, you see I've got several duplicate brushes. Now I've got all of these various brushes that have been loaded into my brush selection, and so I can click on one and you see I come out here and it is ginormous, and just like all the other brushes in my palette, if I use the left bracket it gets smaller, and if I use the right bracket it gets bigger. And the thing about the brushes that you just downloaded is that these brushes will have the appearance of painting when I click one time, as if I've made a whole bunch of marks on watercolor paper with watercolor. And I can change the color that I'm working with. And I can change the brush that I'm working with. So here's a totally different brush. And it appears as if I have used a big fat watercolor brush. Now the thing about this is that if I'm going to paint a background, or I'm going to paint something, the longer I hold it down, it works just like a spray paint can. The more of that it's going to lay down for me. So I'm going to, I double clicked on that to unlock the layer. I'm going to delete this layer after I've made a new one because I don't want this layer. I want it to be blank. And I'm going to just click and make a new layer and change brushes and change colors click, and each time I'm going to make a new brush, and I'm going to make a new color, and I'm going to make a new layer. Whoops. Maybe change its size just slightly. So each of those is their own little layer. And if I don't like one of them, I can move it around. If I don't like one of them, I can delete it. The thing I can't do is work without a layer at all. So I'm going to make another layer and drag it to the bottom. And just so that we have a clean background to work with, I'm going to change the color. Click here, change the color to white. Grab my paint bucket tool. I'm on layer 2 over here. I'm going to turn that to white so you can see I don't have that checkerboard anymore. So I've got a paintbrush layer, and I've got a white layer that I'm working on. I'm going to delete layer 1, make another new layer, and then we're going to work with some paintbrush settings. So I told you earlier that we would get to this. I click on this little folder next to the paintbrush. I chose the paintbrush I want, click on this little folder. It opens all this stuff. And what this stuff does is it allows me to see which brushes I'm using. It allows me to turn the brush at a different angle. I can scatter the brush about. I can, and so just by adjusting that, if I click and hold instead of putting it all on top of one another, oops, I need to change colors. And it lays that thing down on like a wide angle spray paint. I don't like that. I'm going to trash it, make another new layer. The other thing I can do is decide to what degree I want the brush to be the same size. And so here, if I click on Shape Dynamics, the angle, I can change the angle, I can change the roundness of it, I can turn the number of them up, turn the difference between the size up, turn the size down. So now when I click, I go great big to small. And I can change the brush tip, change to this one now. And again, I can get more flexibility and have greater margin of error if I make multiple layers. So all we're doing right now is just playing with the brushes just to see make sure you can load one, see what they can do, give you some options for the next tutorial. So that is all for now. Hopefully you were able to load a brush and use the brush a little bit. If you have any trouble finding the watercolor brushes, those are going to be kind of critical in the next assignment. So make sure you can load and use the watercolor brushes. If you can't, find a neighbor that can help you or ask your teacher. Thanks. Bye.